The lights dimmed, a soft piano melody filled the hall, and my heart beat like a drum. Tonight was supposed to be the beginning of forever, the moment my fiancé, Ethan, would kneel before me and promise a lifetime together. The crowd's eyes sparkled with excitement, cameras ready to capture our fairy tale. But as Ethan turned, smiling under the golden lights, he didn't face me. He turned toward another woman. And when he dropped to one knee before her instead, I didn't cry. I smiled, because what he didn't know was that I had prepared something unforgettable, playing right behind him on the big screen. The air smelled like roses and champagne. Everything shimmered, the crystal chandeliers, the satin drapes, even the silver threads woven into my dress. It was the engagement party of the year, as everyone kept calling it. Friends, colleagues, family, all dressed in elegance, laughter echoing through the grand ballroom. I stood near the center, every inch of me a picture of calm grace. But under that calm, my heart was a storm. Ethan looked devastatingly handsome that night. His charcoal suit fit him like it was sewn for him, his dark hair styled perfectly, his smile flawless. The kind of man every woman turned to look at, and I used to feel lucky he was mine. For 3 years, Ethan and I had been the picture of perfection. The couple who shared coffee in matching mugs, who went on spontaneous road trips, who finished each other's sentences. People used to say we were goals. I used to believe it. I used to think love meant trust, forgiveness, and patience. But I learned the hard way that sometimes love just means denial. 3 weeks before the engagement, everything changed. It was a rainy evening when I received a message from an unknown number. "You deserve to know the truth," it said. Attached were photos, Ethan and a woman with auburn hair, holding hands in a restaurant I recognized. A place he once told me he hated because the service was too slow. There were more photos, him kissing her forehead at a park, him helping her out of his car, him smiling in a way I hadn't seen in months. Her name appeared in one of the captions, Vanessa. I stared at those pictures until the rain outside blurred into the glass, until the ache inside me turned to something sharper. Not tears, not rage, just a quiet, calculated kind of pain. I didn't confront him right away. I wanted to. Every night, when he called and said he was working late, I wanted to scream into the phone. But something inside me whispered, wait. So I did. And while he thought I was planning our perfect engagement, I was planning his reckoning. I learned every detail I could. Vanessa worked at his firm. They started seeing each other during a business trip to Dubai. She was single, ambitious, and from the looks of her social media, deeply in love with my fiancé. I collected everything, messages, photos, receipts. Enough to crush the perfect illusion he'd built around us. On the day of the engagement, I stared at myself in the mirror for a long time. My reflection looked strong, almost serene. I told myself, tonight isn't about revenge. It's about truth. When the guests arrived, everything unfolded just as I'd planned. The decor glowed in gold and ivory, and our initials shimmered on the big LED screen. Ethan walked in beside me, his hand resting possessively on my waist. "You look beautiful," he whispered. I smiled. "You too." He kissed my cheek, and for a brief second, I saw it, the man I once loved. The man who promised me forever under city lights and whispered dreams into my hair. I wanted to believe that version of him still existed. But then he glanced across the room, and his eyes met hers, Vanessa, in a crimson dress, standing near the champagne table. The look they exchanged was enough to tell me I was right. He thought he was clever. He thought no one noticed. But I saw everything. The host stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand, voice cheerful. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the moment we've all been waiting for, the proposal." The crowd cheered. Cameras flashed. I felt every heartbeat in my throat as Ethan walked to the center of the stage, holding a small velvet box. This was it, the scene I had replayed in my mind 100 times. Only, in my version, it ended differently. The music softened, and I expected him to turn to me. Instead, he took one step to the side, then another, and stopped in front of Vanessa. My breath caught. My vision blurred for half a second, but I didn't move. My body froze, like time itself had stopped. The entire hall fell silent, confusion rippling through the crowd. Ethan smiled, dropped to one knee, and opened the box. "Vanessa," he said, voice steady, "I can't keep pretending anymore. You are the woman I want to spend my life with." A gasp escaped someone in the audience. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father stood up, his eyes wide with disbelief. Vanessa's tears glittered under the lights as she covered her face in mock surprise. And I, his fiancé, stood mere feet away, watching my world collapse in front of hundreds of people. But what none of them knew was that my heartbreak had already burned itself out weeks ago. What replaced it was something colder. Smarter. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I simply looked toward the back of the hall and gave a small nod. The giant LED screen flickered to life behind Ethan and Vanessa. The slideshow he'd approved, our memories together, had been replaced. The first image appeared, Ethan and Vanessa, laughing in a hotel lobby. The next, him kissing her shoulder on a balcony. Then, a video clip, his voice saying, "Lena will never find out. She's too trusting." Gasps erupted. The crowd went still. Phones came up. Whispers turned into stunned murmurs. Vanessa's face drained of color, her hand trembling. Ethan turned around, confusion morphing into horror as image after image filled the screen, his lies, his texts, his promises to her. I stepped forward, my voice steady. "Well," I said softly, "I guess congratulations are in order, for both of you." Ethan spun toward me, eyes wide. "Lena, this isn't." I raised my hand, cutting him off. "No, please, don't insult me further. The truth's already bigger than any excuse you can make." Vanessa tried to speak, but I turned to her. "You can keep the ring," I said, my voice calm, "but I suggest you return his dignity, if you can find it." Laughter, uneasy, nervous, rippled through the room. Ethan's face flushed red, veins straining at his temples. "You planned this," he hissed. I smiled faintly. "No, Ethan, you did." And then I walked off the stage, every camera flash lighting my path like fireworks of closure. Behind me, chaos broke loose, shouting, crying, people whispering my name. But I didn't look back. Outside, the night air wrapped around me, cold and clean. I breathed it in, deeply. The music from the ballroom faded into a distant hum. For the first time in months, I felt light. Free. Maybe people would talk. Maybe I'd become gossip for a while. But I didn't care, because tonight, I didn't lose anything, I reclaimed myself. And as I looked at the reflection of the ballroom's golden lights shimmering in the fountain outside, I whispered to myself, "You were never the fool, Lena. You were the finale." The morning after the engagement disaster, I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing relentlessly, hundreds of notifications lighting up the screen. My name was everywhere. The video had gone viral. Millions of people had seen Ethan kneel before Vanessa, and then watched his betrayal explode on the big screen. Some called me brave, others called me heartless, but as I stared at the headlines, I realized something deeper. This wasn't just a scandal anymore, it was my rebirth. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel broken. I felt powerful. The sunlight poured through my window, almost too bright. I lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling, my body heavy but my heart strangely calm. Everything felt like a dream. The lights, the gasps, Ethan's shocked face, Vanessa's trembling hands. I could still hear the crowd's whispers echoing in my mind. But beneath the replay of chaos, there was peace. A quiet, steady kind of peace that only comes after the truth finally bursts free. My phone was still vibrating. I picked it up and blinked at the screen, thousands of notifications, messages, and missed calls. Friends, strangers, reporters, even distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. The video had been shared on every platform. Someone had recorded the entire moment, from Ethan's proposal to my calm, devastating exposure. The captions varied, but they all said the same thing. Woman exposes cheating fiancé at her own engagement party. The clip had millions of views. People were commenting, arguing, praising, analyzing every second. Some called me an icon of revenge. Some pitied me, but I didn't feel like a victim anymore. Not even close. That afternoon, my mother came to see me. She held me close without saying a word. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "You handled it with grace, sweetheart. You showed strength even when your heart was breaking." I nodded, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. "I thought I'd be devastated, Mom. But I'm not. I'm just done." She smiled sadly. "That's what healing feels like in the beginning. Quiet and strange." For the next few days, I stayed home. I avoided calls, ignored interviews, and deleted most of my social apps. But no matter how hard I tried to escape it, the story kept following me. My name trended. People made edits, reactions, even articles about the woman who exposed the cheater. At first, it felt invasive. Then it felt empowering. Every few hours, I'd get a message from a woman somewhere in the world. Thank you for standing up for yourself. You gave me courage to leave my toxic partner. I wish I had your strength. I realized something profound then. The moment that shattered my life had become a mirror for others. My pain had meaning now. 4 days later, Ethan showed up. It was evening. I had just made tea when I heard a knock. I froze, knowing that knock instantly, the rhythm, the hesitation. When I opened the door, there he was. He looked nothing like the man who used to walk into rooms with confidence. His eyes were tired, his hair disheveled, his face pale. In his hands, a bouquet of wilted roses. "Lena," he said, voice trembling slightly. "Please, I just want to talk." I didn't move. "There's nothing left to say, Ethan." "Please," he repeated. "I need to explain. I know how it looked, but it wasn't what you think." I almost laughed. "You mean it didn't look like you proposing to another woman at our engagement party?" He winced. "I messed up. I didn't plan to do that there. It just happened." I crossed my arms. "People trip. Accidents happen. But proposing to your mistress in front of your fiancé? That takes planning, Ethan." His shoulders slumped. "I loved you, Lena. I swear I did. But things got complicated. Vanessa, she made me feel seen again. We had problems, you and I didn't know how to fix them." A cold smile tugged at my lips. "You fix problems by talking, not by cheating." He swallowed hard. "I regret it every second. Please, I just want a chance to make things right." I stepped aside, letting him see the apartment behind me, empty of everything that once connected us. His photos gone, his gifts boxed away. "You can't make things right when trust is already dead," I said quietly. He looked at me, eyes glistening. "You've changed." I said. "You burned the old version of me when you betrayed her." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he whispered, "I'll regret losing you for the rest of my life." I nodded slowly. "You should." And with that, I closed the door. As I leaned against it, tears filled my eyes again, but they weren't for him anymore. They were for the woman who had stayed too long, loved too much, and finally learned to let go. That night, I deleted his number. I took off the engagement ring that I'd kept in a drawer, not as a memory, but as a reminder of what I'd overcome. Then I did something unexpected. I opened my laptop and began to write. The words flowed out of me like confession and healing combined. I wrote about betrayal, strength, and the rediscovery of self. I posted the first piece under the title Unmasked Hearts. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from women and men alike. Some shared their stories, others thanked me for mine. Writing became my therapy. Every word I wrote built a new version of me, one that didn't need validation, one that stood tall on her own. Months passed, and slowly, the viral fame faded. But something new blossomed in its place, purpose. I turned Unmasked Hearts into a blog, then into a small online community for people recovering from heartbreak. It grew faster than I imagined. I started hosting virtual talks, sharing stories of resilience, inviting psychologists and survivors to speak. For the first time in years, I woke up excited for something that was entirely mine. One day, I received an email from an event organizer inviting me to speak at a women's empowerment conference. My hands trembled as I read it. Me, a public speaker. The same woman who once stood silent while her fiancé cheated behind her back. But I said yes. When I stepped onto that stage months later, the applause was thunderous. Hundreds of faces looked up at me, waiting to hear my story. And as I began to speak, I saw reflections of my own past pain in their eyes, fear, heartbreak, but also hope. I told them everything. The love, the betrayal, the humiliation, and the rebirth. I told them that healing isn't about revenge, it's about rediscovering the version of yourself that you forgot existed before someone else tried to define you. By the time I finished, the entire room was on its feet. Tears, smiles, applause, it all blended into one powerful moment. When I walked off stage, a woman stopped me, holding my hand tightly. "You saved me," she whispered. "I was about to marry someone just like him. But after watching your story, I left." I hugged her, unable to speak. That's when I realized the truth. Ethan's betrayal wasn't my ending, it was my awakening. A year later, on the same date that was supposed to be my wedding, I took myself on a solo trip to Greece. As I stood on a cliff overlooking the sunset, the sea glittering like a field of gold, I smiled, not because I had moved on with someone else, but because I had finally moved on with myself. The past no longer hurt. It had become part of my story, a story I owned, not one I suffered through. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, I whispered into the wind, "Thank you for leaving, Ethan. You freed me to find me." Sometimes, life doesn't fall apart, it falls into place, one heartbreak at a time.